Hello folks, and welcome back to another video on this channel. If all goes to plan when you're seeing this video, I will be on vacation in Budapest, Hungary with my partner, which I'm over the moon about, honestly. I studied abroad in Budapest in spring of 2016, and I haven't been back since. I will insert a picture of a very young, naive 20-year-old Lillian. The city itself has a really special place in my heart, and I've been really keen to go back. So excited that I get to take my partner there. So in the lead up to this trip, I wanted to get my hands on some books by Hungarian authors, both fiction and non-fiction, as a way to fill out some of the context that I already have about the city and the country based on my own experience, and also get to share some books and authors that you may not have heard of. So the first part of this video is going to be a little haul with some biographic notes on the Hungarian authors, and then the second part of this video is going to be sort of a TBR of sorts of Hungarian authors that I have come across that I'm interested or intrigued to check out their work in the future. And with that, my friends, kezdjük! Up front, I just want to apologize to any native Hungarian speakers for my pronunciation in this video. Bocsánat, hogy nem beszélek jól magyarul. I'm doing my best in the lead up to this trip to refresh what little Hungarian I did pick up when I was there in 2016, and I'm definitely being humbled and reminded as to why my native speaking Hungarian 101 teacher definitely took pity on our class. The first book and author of this haul is Embers by Sándor Márai. This is translated from the Hungarian by Carol Brown Janeway. Sándor Márai is a Hungarian author that was born in 1900 and passed away in 1989. He was the author of 46 books, mostly novels, and based on his Wikipedia article is considered by many critics to be one of Hungary's most influential representatives of middle-class literature between the First and the Second World War. He wrote in his native Hungarian for his entire life and was not translated into English until after his death. This book, Embers, was originally published in 1943. In it, Márai expresses a nostalgia for a long-gone, multi-ethnic, multicultural society of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and in it conjures the melancholy glamour of a decaying empire and the disillusioned wisdom of its heirs. Quote, "In a secluded woodland castle, an old general prepares to receive a rare visitor, a man who was once his closest friend, but who he has not seen in 41 years. Over the ensuing hours, host and guest will fight a duel of words and silences, accusations and evasions. They will exhume the memory of their friendship and that of the general's beautiful, long-dead wife, and they will return to a time the three of them last sat together following a hunt in the nearby forest, a hunt in which no game was taken, but during which something was lost forever." Next, I have this nonfiction book, Budapest 1900, a historical portrait of a city and its culture by John Lukacs. John Lukacs was born in Budapest in 1924 to a Roman Catholic father and a Jewish mother. His parents divorced prior to the Second World War. During the Second World War, he was forced to participate in a Hungarian labor battalion specifically for Jews. During the German occupation of Hungary from 1944 to 1945, he managed to evade deportation and death camps and even survived the siege of Budapest. In 1946, he came to the United States in the wake of the communist regime taking hold on Hungary. This book is apparently a lyrical and nostalgic portrait of the city of Budapest at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century. Lukacs apparently focuses on a number of famous Hungarian authors, writers, artists, intellectuals who lived and died in Hungary, ones who chose to stay in their native Hungary rather than leaving and becoming expats. This book also happens to contain a number of really great historic photographs of the city during this time period. The next book that I picked up in honor of this upcoming trip is Budapest Diary, In Search of the Mother Book by Susan Rubin Schuleima, who is a research professor of the civilization of France and French comparative literature at Harvard. She, however, was born in Budapest in 1939 and fled the communist regime with her family at the age of 10 in 1949, coming to the US and growing up here. In 1993, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the the death of her mother, Suleiman returned to the city for a 6-month stay. And this is a diary of her 6-month stay there. In it, she's recounting her ongoing quest for her own personal history, interweaving her own personal search with the stories of present-day Hungarians struggling to make sense of the changes in their individual and collective lives. Quote, Suleiman's search for documents relating to her childhood, the lives of her parents and their families, and the Jewish communities of Hungary and Poland take her on a series of fascinating journeys within and outside Budapest. Emerging from this eloquent, often suspenseful diary is the portrait of an intellectual who recaptures her past and comes into contact with the vital, troubling world of contemporary Eastern Europe. Suleiman's vivid descriptions of her encounters with a proud old city and its people in a time of historical change reminds us that every life story is once unique and part of a larger history. If I don't manage to get to this book prior to my trip, I am strongly considering bringing it with me and reading it while I'm there. I think this one is the only book on this list that is not written by a Hungarian, and this is The Budapest Breakfast Club by Andy Conway. Andy Conway, I believe, is a self-published author from the UK. I happened to find this on thrift books when I was searching for books related to Budapest, books by Hungarian authors. When I read the description of this book, it sounded like it might be a fun one to pick up based on my own experiences of living in the city and now coming back to visit it. In this book, we're apparently following a group of former students who 10 years ago lived in the city of Budapest, and now one of them is back in the city to film a movie based on their experience. However, in coming back to make this movie, it ends up stirring up memories for the members of this former Budapest Breakfast Club, and drama ensues. Would this even be a Hungarian book haul / Hungarian author TBR if I didn't mention Magda Zabo, which the next two books I'm about to mention are. The first being Abigail. I feel like I've seen a number of folks on BookTube in the past year or so read Magda Zabo, particularly this book, Catalan Street and The Door. I picked up Abigail and Catalan Street as my entry points to Zabo's work. Magda Zabo is arguably Hungary's foremost female novelist. She also wrote dramas, plays, memoirs, poetry, and children's literature. She is the most translated Hungarian author with publications in 42 countries and in over 30 languages. She was born in 1917 and passed away in 2007 at the ripe old age of 90. She began her writing career as a poet during Stalinist rule of Hungary from 1949 to 1956, during which the Hungarian Communist government would not allow her to publish her work. Abigail was first published in 1970 and is an adventure story of a young girl living in a Calvinist-only girls' boarding school in eastern Hungary during the Second World War. Catalan Street, or Catalan Utca, was published the previous year in 1969. Both this and Abigail were translated from the Hungarian by Len Rix. I think this is the Magda Zabo book that I've seen the most people on BookTube pick up. It's initially set in Budapest with three families whose lives are intertwined as they all live as neighbors on the same street. These families are subsequently torn apart or fragmented as a result of the 1944 German occupation of the city. Those who survive are left to sort through the aftermath of the upheaval and chaos brought on and inflicted on each other during it. And the final book that I picked up recently for this haul is Budapest Portrait of a City Between East and West by Viktor Sebestyén. And yes, I did look up that pronunciation. For my fellow English-speaking folks, when there is a singular S in a Hungarian word and it's not followed by a Z, then it is pronounced with a sh sound, and only when there is a SZ is it a s sound. This is a book that I'm currently in the midst of and thoroughly enjoying. This is a sweeping, nearly 2,000 history of the city of Budapest. Viktor Sebestyén was born in the city in 1956 and left the same year with his family fleeing the communist regime, which seems to be a trend with a number of these authors that I'm talking about. He went on to become a journalist covering Eastern Europe and the Soviet bloc, as well as the eventual fall of the Soviet Union. He made his way back to Budapest many times during the Cold War as a reporter, and after getting to know the place that he was born and falling in love with the city and all of its layers and complexities. Again, so far I've really been enjoying this book. It's honestly been a roller coaster when it comes to the actual history of this city, from the early Celtic tribes to the Romans to the Mongols to the actual Magyar tribes. Magyar is the name of the people that Western Europe would eventually call the Hungarians, the Turks, and that's just the first third of this book, where we're going from the 1st century CE to around the 14th, 15th century. That's how far I've gotten, and we've already covered so much. We haven't even gotten into the 19th and 20th century, which I know are going to be doozies. If you love history, if you have ever been curious about this city or this part of the world, or if, like myself, you're looking to get a bit more context for an upcoming trip, then so far I can definitely recommend this book. I'm having so much fun reading it, annotating it, taking notes that I plan to bring on our trip with me as reference to when we're visiting certain places. Next, I wanted to mention 5 female Hungarian authors and or poets that I have on my radar to check out in the future. I will say, when I was initially doing research for this part of the video, it was definitely a hit or miss as to whether authors that I was coming across had been translated into English, so I think that's something to keep in mind when looking into Hungarian authors. Of course, if you know of any Hungarian authors that you think I should check out, or if you've read any from the following, I would definitely love to hear about it in the comments below. The first author on my radar is Ágnes Nemesné. She's apparently considered to be one of Hungary's most important female poets of the 20th century. During the Second World War, she was involved in civilian resistance efforts. Quote, "Her poetry unites lyrical sensitivity with historical consciousness, morality, erudition, and intelligence with blazing passion. Her verbal magic transmuted everyday experiences and things into universal and enduring beauty." At the moment, I currently have my eye on a published selection of her work called Between Selected Poems of Ágnes Nemesné. And I just realized that the first time I said her surname, I pronounced it as Nay. It's Naj. My apologies. Next up is Baroness Emma Orcsi, who was a 19th century Hungarian and English novelist and playwright. She's the author of The Scarlet Pimpernel, which has been argued as the prototype for the modern-day superhero. It's the story of an English aristocrat who appears to be nothing more than a wealthy fop, but in reality he is a formidable swordsman who undertakes secret missions to rescue nobility from the French guillotine during the Terror. It introduced elements and themes that we're now very familiar seeing in the superhero genre, such as a hero with a secret identity, a penchant for disguise, the use of a signature weapon, in this case a sword, as well as leaving behind a calling card, a scarlet pimpernel. Next is the contemporary Hungarian poet Kristina Toth. So far she's published over 40 books in her lifetime, and 2 of those have been translated into English. Both of them appear to be short story collections. The one that sounded the most intriguing to me is her collection Pixel. Quote, "Each chapter is named after a human body part. Together they form a body of stories about marginalized people across several decades and across the whole of Europe. Each story is sharp, fresh, and original. The intricate architecture of the novel reveals its treasures slowly but sensitively. Its grand designs are matched totally by the exquisite writing from Hungary's famous poet." Next, I wanted to mention Andrea Petu, who is a historian at the Central European University. She's a professor in the Department of Gender Studies, where she teaches courses on European comparative social and gender history, gender politics, and women's movements, all of which are right up my alley in terms of what I personally studied for my undergraduate history degree. And I have to say, it's so cool when you find someone else who is within that same niche of research and thematic analysis. A book of hers that I've really got my eye on is Gendered Wars, Gendered Memories, Feminist Conversations on War, Genocide, and Political Violence. This came out in 2018, which understandably is probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea. However, this sounds like it's really aligned with what I happened to focus on for my undergrad thesis when it came to the First World War. So I'm geeking out a little bit over this one. I'll read you a snippet of the summary. Quote, discussing the participation of women in war, sexual violence in times of conflict, the use of visual and dramatic representations of memory research, and the creative challenges of research and writing posed by feminist scholarship. Gendered Wars, Gendered Memories will appeal to scholars working at the intersection of military, war, memory, and gender studies, seeking to chart this emerging territory with feminist curiosity. Sorry, I'm geeking a little bit. I'm really looking forward to picking this book up in the future. Katalin Ladik is a contemporary Hungarian poet, performance artist, and actress. Along with her written poems, she also creates sound poems, visual poems, and performance art. She writes and performs experimental music and audio plays as well. A lot of her work reportedly falls into the surreal and avant-garde art movements. She apparently explores language through visual and vocal expression, as well as movement and gesture. The one book of hers that I was able to find that had been translated into English is Opus, which when you see the title of the book over there, you'll understand why I said it that way, which I believe is a poetry collection. I definitely want to check out this as well as her work as a whole. And I think that about wraps up this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and there will definitely be a travel vlog of our time in Budapest coming out in the coming weeks. So excited to get to go back to the city and document parts of it for myself, but also get to share it with you all. So stay tuned for that. And I want to know, have you ever done a dive into a country or a region's history and literature before visiting? Would you possibly do so for future trips? Let me know if after watching this video there are any Hungarian authors that have piqued your interest. But with that, I'm gonna sign off from this video. Köszönjük, hogy figyeltek! Viszlát!